All right, we got an Expedition here. I believe it's 2004 Ford Expedition. It's got the V8 in. I'm not sure if it's. I'll have to check and see which one it is. He said it was dying randomly here and there, and evidently someone had put a radio in it and maybe a throttle body, from what I understand. I'm not sure what happened there, but I was just told that there was a code and someone put a throttle body on it, and that's all I know. So it's got a P0171, a P0174. It's leaning on bank 1 and bank 2, which sounds like it could be some kind of air leak or maybe something like that. So we're going to investigate that. First thing to do is take off the little engine dress cover and look under there and look at the throttle body and see and make sure everything's hooked up right, and look for some vacuum leaks. Just do a nice visual inspection on it. So it did have the Iat code, and I popped the hood on it, and that was disconnected. So whoever put the throttle body on, I guess, forgot to connect that back up. And then I cleared the codes on it. It had the bank, both the banks being lean, a couple other random codes in there, and I figured the IAT would maybe cure that problem. So I ended up disconnecting it, clearing the codes last night, drove it to the auto parts store today to pick up some oil because he wanted an oil change, and the light came back on the way back. It's running good. As far as I feel, it runs fine. I don't feel anything. There's not like a miss or anything weird going on with it as far as that goes. So anyway, I got a feeling it's probably something pretty simple, but we'll get over there and look and see what's going on. The first thing I do is just remove that cover on the engine, and then we'll get in there and see what we can find. And this does have, I just looked, this does have the 5.4, not the 4.6. Probably pretty similar no matter what. As far as diagnosis goes on them, they're pretty much the same. Like I said, last night when I looked at it, we dropped it off. The IAT, which is right here, was completely unplugged. So I went ahead and plugged that back in. So it doesn't look like it has a new throttle body on it. So maybe I misunderstood them. This is definitely not a brand new throttle body. So just going to do a quick visual inspection and see what I can find. I may end up smoke testing it. See if I can find a leak, air leak somewhere. Yeah, I don't see. It's definitely not a new throttle body on here. I don't actually see anything new under here. I swear that's what he said. But anyway, I'm just going to do a real quick visual inspection on it real fast. Actually, I got a leak right here. This hose going to the... I'm surprised. Maybe it's not leaking yet. This hose here is in pretty bad shape. I'm not sure if that's going to be the issue or not. It's going to the purge cell, it looks like. So anyway, I'll do a quick visual on it, and we'll go from there and see. Maybe I'll shoot him a text and find out what he did change, and just kind of go from there. But I'm leaning towards some kind of vacuum leak, just because it's lean on both sides, and there's no other accompanying codes with it. So we may just do a smoke test on it real quick and see if we come up with anything that way. But let me look over this a little bit better, the lines and stuff, and then we'll pick it back up. Alright, so I just talked to him. I guess I misunderstood him. Whoever worked on it changed the mass air The mass air on these are inside here, inside your air filter housing. And evidently this was changed, so this is brand new. So we're going to kind of set this off to the side. I got my bladder here, and it's not big enough. This is a huge opening here on these Expeditions. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just put this bladder. This is where you hook to your smoke machine. It's got a line here, and then a pump, and you pump it up. It's just that this air intake hose is so big that I'm going to have to use. I'm going to have to put this bladder actually inside the air intake hose and stick it up in there to where it is. So I got it up into this more narrow part, more normal size spot. And I'm going to go ahead and hook the smoke machine up to it. And we're just going to smoke this real quick and see if there's any kind of air leak. It's possible it's a PCV or something like that. With it being both banks and there's no other codes, I'm really leaning towards like a cracked hose on the intake or something like that. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and hook the smoke machine up real quick, hook it to that bladder inside there, and then we'll see what we got. Alright, so I had the smoke machine running for a while, and I traced it back to this elbow in the back of the engine here, the intake. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. You can see the smoke maybe, but I can't really get back into that elbow. I'm going to pull that thing off, and let me see if I can. I don't know if you can see the smoke there. Sorry, the compressor just kicked on. But we got that elbow leaking pretty good back there on the back of the intake. We also have a heater control valve leaking pretty good on top of the coils and stuff over here. I'm going to have to tell them about that. But I'm going to try to remove that little elbow back there and see if we can see what the problem is with it. Alright, I went ahead and pulled that the hosing off from the back. This goes to the back of the intake, and this is where the smoke was coming out on the smoke machine. This goes over to right around by your throttle body. Now, this one might go to your PCV, and then this one goes to your throttle body. And anyway, you can see here, this is why we're probably having that lean code on both banks. If I can get you in there, there's a big hole. Now, when it's hooked up, it's not as big, but it's still a pretty big hole. And sorry about this. I'm trying to do this in one hand and show you this hole. Let me take over the bench. Anyway, maybe it's easier to see, but that's the big hole we have right there in the back of the intake. And don't know if this actual elbow is available, if I have to replace this hose. We'll look it up and see. Looks like it would just come off, but I know how this is, trying to find stuff like this. And anyway, so we'll look and see if we can find it. We might just go ahead and replace the PCV anyway, because the car has 180,000 something miles on, I think. So we might just replace the PCV and find out about this here. I don't know if they sell just this elbow. So anyway, I'm going to go do some research and then we'll pick this back up. Alright, so if you go to the auto parts store and get the heated PCV valve, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get everything, all new lines. The new elbow. I think the help, maybe Dorman or someone, or even the help section might sell these elbows, but they're basically glued onto this plastic line here, so you have to cut it off and replace it. The reason why I haven't replaced everything is because this car has almost 200,000, 180 something, and it looks like it's got the original PCV valve and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and replace this whole thing, and then we'll put it back together and see what happens with the check engine light. But it's pretty self-explanatory. The back of this manifold, this just pulls off. There's nothing holding on. And then you have a couple hose clamps for the other two, and then the one on the PCV. The PCV just pulls straight out. There's nothing holding that on. There's no bolts or anything. So it's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on, and then we'll clear the code and see what else we come up with. Alright, so I took it for a pretty good test drive. You can see there's no check engine light on right now. So far, so good. You know, I don't know. A lot of people aren't going to have a smoke machine, which I understand that. But a good visual inspection is always good. If you have those lean banks, especially if you got a V8 and there's a lean bank on both banks, first thing I always think of is some kind of intake leak or some kind of air leak. Even if you have a 4-cylinder, I would check that. That's one of the first things I would check. You may not be able to see this elbow visually that well, but if you get a light back there, maybe take it off. If you can take it off without breaking it, you could have saw that rip. So even without a smoke machine, you still could have probably fixed this. It just would have been a little harder just because of where that was located at. And if you're doing your own work a lot, smoke machine on eBay, they have a lot of kind of like homemade ones. They work pretty good. That's actually one of the ones I use, and it works really well. I've been using it for about 5 or 6 years, and they have a regulator on it to lower the pressure and all that, so they work well. But anyway, that's the P0171 and P0174, what we found on this expedition. He could have saved some money, maybe bring it to me first. He had the mass air changed, and that obviously wasn't the problem. That probably is one of the first things that you would look at if you had both those codes. But then you'd want to go into live data and kind of monitor the mass air and see what it's doing before you would change it. But that's just kind of like just because you have a certain code and then certain things may always correlate to that code doesn't mean that necessarily what the problem is. There could be something else underlying causing that issue. So that's kind of the danger of going and get your car scanned at AutoZone or scan it yourself and then just changing whatever the code comes back or whatever the likely thing is. Sometimes it pays to do a really good visual inspection on it, and then if you can understand the scan data and look at it, what you're looking at, you probably could have ruled that mass air out almost completely, I bet. But anyway, it's an expensive lesson. But anyway, I guess that's about it on this one. The other thing I could bring home on this is just do a really good visual inspection on it and use your scan tool, but don't necessarily change out whatever the most popular thing is for that code. Dig a little deeper, make sure that you're not changing the wrong part. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next one, and as always, God bless.